So what I would like to share with you, this is how I started collecting art. When I first introduced the formal theory to a medical association meeting, and I used the art of this great artist, Henry Gorski, to illustrate the transformations of a symbolic language of the mind. And so it's extraordinary to see the consistency of his symbolism as the challenge of this interpretation, scientific interpretation of symbolism. And so I'll take you through some of these rooms so you can see the continuity of the theme of the mouth, which the mouth is presenting all the emotions, and how the mouth is presented here in a very loving, consistent way, be that as a sculpture that is horizontal or vertical or a mural, and all of these expressions, kind of define love and conflict resolution. And come this way so that you can spread them out. And this is a phase in his development of the emotions related to resolution. Now, I also have a lady and a rooster, which are from two different artists, to show the issue of love defined as a different way of presenting love and kisses. And it is the concept of this woman who says the free as a woman who is allowed to love, and the rooster as the dominant animal that likes to have power with his mouth. But as we go into the other rooms, you'll see the transformations of these emotions with playing with the theme of the mouth.
So all the paintings are these?
All of these are paintings of his, yes.
Different styles too.
So what I want you to see here is the consistency of the mouth being blocked. And this is for a period of his work that is related to the Vietnam era. And this is the committee. And you can see all of these canvases, they have the problem of a person not having the capacity to say what a person feels. This is called the man of letters. And you can see how the person is manipulated with a machine to have a voice which is very broken, and the person really cannot articulate too much other than letters. This is the person oppressed by the technology of the computer, and this tongue says, do not bend, fold, mutilate, or spindle, while the person is totally covered up by the technology of the era. And this is Odysseus, who is blocked by all sorts of technology, and he cannot see where he's going. He has no eyes. This is the stringed instrument, and it shows how all sorts of instruments fragment a person's vision and capacity to breathe. All of that is technology, and the person is oppressed. Maybe you press a button and you spit coins. So it's very dramatic as an alternative to having kisses. This is the transformation again of a person who is blocked and he's trying to open up his mouth. And here you see the person emerging from inside the person. Hi. And here you see the cosmonaut and the theme of the person going into space, but having no eyes and no mouth. The person is totally blocked emotionally. But it's kind of an interesting construction of feeling blocked. And you can see the earth in a distance. And here you see the struggle of the mouth to open up and to scream. And in that one, he's presenting the person singing, but again, it's very difficult to see how the person manifests himself other than the scream in a colorful way. Zero Mostel as a kite. Now, so I want you to remember, we saw the kisses in the other room, and here we see no mouth. So you see the continuity of his presentation of emotions. The most commercially successful period of Gorski's art has been the sports paintings. But you can see what is special about his sports paintings is that people don't have faces, that they have uniforms and numbers, they're competing, and the energy is there. But again, the feelings are hidden. I'm sorry, the lights are turned to working on the table rather than looking at the paintings. And this is an office space as well as an exhibit place. But we should have refocused the lights so that you can see. And you can see all the sports are represented. Basketball, running, hockey, and skiing. In this area you see football players. And what is interesting again is to see the symmetry and the formality in his work. So there you see the 18 and 81 coming in as a reflection.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So what I want you to see here is the continuity of the transformation of images, and what the blocking of the face is doing is creating the agony of competition and fight, the internal turmoil. And the artist is a guru for me, a person who has sensitivity of emotions. And his art is not just about selling art and pictures and paintings, but presenting his experience of the politics of the times. Now, at another level of this gallery, you get the science of these images. And we have in one room the science of the scale, the other room the science of the pendulum, the six-roll process, and in the middle you have the emphasis of morality. And you have a lot of crucifixions. So we have to go downstairs. But before you do that, there are two small rooms where there is more interesting art. The one is the little office space in which you see the artist's family, the artist's kids, the artist's environment, and you see different techniques in presenting the different things, the landscapes, the family, the definition of time. And so this is a very special room. As we go downstairs, you'll see a series of his paintings, the last phase of his artwork, where he spent time at the institution where his son was being taken care of. He had an autistic son who never opened his mouth, who never could talk other than scream. And I think this is part of his preoccupation with the mouth, the personal sense of agony for caring for his son who could not
That's what,
speak.
when you look at this, you understand why he painted.
Yes.
Yes.
It helps to understand his personal language in terms of what his personal stress was about. So here is the early paintings. He's coming home from the war in 47, 46, his father's tavern, the monuments. So this is the earliest of his paintings, and he gave it to me as a present, and he's coming home from the war in Buffalo, where his family are living. And you can see he's outgrowing that area. Here you see his children, the child of darkness and the child now that has the bluebird in his hand, and he's presenting that as the illusion of seeing his son having a bluebird in his hand, but really it's the bluebird is in his shirt. And here you see the two monuments from New Haven, the sleeping giant and the East Rock, and you see different techniques of work, in Oriental techniques and caustic technique. And here you see the issue of seeing the God defined as an hourglass. We have two physical phenomena to talk about the science. In this room we have the scale, and the concept of the scale having principles of balance. So here you have an equilibrium, and by putting a weight, it's like covering the mouth. And then the way of responding is either putting another weight on this tray, or moving the fulcrum, or taking this weight completely out. Now, the mind operates with this equilibrial formula, and you can see the paintings now from this perspective of how the symbolism is changing as the emotions are evolving. The oppression is the fingerprint on top of the face. Try not to be on the way of the camera. Oh, yes. And here you have a very beautiful illustration of what it feels like in his many paintings where you see the mouth obstructed. And the image of this fingerprint on top of the face, it's really presenting the feeling of oppression of a cultural period when people were into a war again, and where his son couldn't speak, and where his emotions were held in with a lot of anger. And then in the images that he is evolving, you can see the explosion of anger, the difficulty with restraining his power, and you see the sequence of mouths and the emptiness of the eyes as the blind anger that's coming from inside the person. So here we have passivity, and here we have activity, the formal operations. Now, on the other side, we have the removal of the weight from the scale. And here you see the mouth of God coming out of the wall and kissing Adam, who is underneath. And you see the symmetry of the mouth from here, and the mouth like a heart down below, the nose of Adam, the chin. And you see the harmonics that he sketched in. And he put symbols that are mathematical, like the P, like the pi, which has a lot to do with harmonics, and A's and B's. And so he calls this painting the mathematical proof of the metaphysical existence of God. And what I'm saying here is the discovery of cooperation, removing the weight. Instead of feeling oppressed by the fingerprint, this man is able to feel loved. The opposites, cooperation and antagonism. And then this is a very different painting, and you see the real mouth of the artist in all its detail, his chin, his eye, and that is in the middle of a cross and halos, and it's all shimmering, but the reality is in the emotional release, the sense of conflict resolution, and the morality that is entailed in that. For a person who is Christian and he's finding himself in the center of resolution, in the compassionate way of resolving conflict, of being able to suffer. And he could be suffering because his son cannot speak. It could be his resolve because he has found inner peace with whatever conflicts he experienced during that period. But what I want to show you here is that the symbolic language can be interpreted. The symbolic language of the unconscious has one dimension that can be translated from the chaos of symbolism into an orderly, interpretable language. And the scale is the paradigm of how we can use physics, logic, math to be able to quantify a state of mind. As an aside of the conflict the expression of different emotions here. I'd like to show you his agony in his relationship with women. And so this particular painting shows the body of a woman opening up as a door, and inside you see the nuclear power symbol, and you see the cat and mouse situation, you see the queen of a chess game and the pawns, and you see the whole game board as the situation of, if you step on the wrong square, you might get zapped by this machine. Here you see the relationship of man and woman called vows. And in the vows you see also 3 clouds obstructing the simplicity of having just vows. Over there you see a triptych. Ladies, go ahead. And the triptych, you see the woman mesmerizing men who go in bug-eyed. And on the one side you see the man as a bug figure who has no mouth but he has tentacles. And on the other you see the woman's mouth with prehensile tentacles on a game board. And it is engaging this kind of play, which he also symbolizes in the games that we saw upstairs, with all sorts of agony of finding one's voice. So this is about understanding conflict and conflict resolution in a symbolic language that can be measured. If we can gather here, please. In this room, what I would like to point out is the transformation of symbolism from conflict to resolution in 2 different thematic periods. So if you look at the evolution, here you see the man as a bug figure having no mouth and becoming manipulative. And he calls this Kafka 1, Kafka 2. And here you have a transformation. The mouth suddenly appears coming through the gag. And the association is a dramatic development with an artist who didn't have mouths forever. And the evolution of having a mouth is creating a new world of conflict for him. So here you see the red kiss, which is the kiss of passion. And the passion is translated with the need for loving from a woman. But the woman is presented now in the next canvas as blocked, as forbidden, as anxiety-provoking. And you have a little flower in the middle of this canvas, which then is evolving in the next painting into a rose, and a rose being violated. So he calls this painting the rape of the rose. But you can see the agony is also presented with this canvas, which shows as the pendulum is coming to the kiss, the tension is increasing. And so there is a continuity from having no mouth to having a mouth who wants to kiss, to anxiety of kissing, and then losing control and having the rape of the rose, transgression. So instead of having love, you have sex, and you feel guilty about it. And the guilt is manifested in this canvas, which is called No Place to Hide. And you see big eyes, and mouth has shrunk. And you see the person tried to hide, but being very visible and self-conscious. And this is the resolution of a person being a vacant person, a vacant empty spot, but having a face which is only evident where there is a cross. And this is the series of crucifixions that shows his propensity to morality. Now, if you see this sequence here as a conflict resolution phenomenon, So this becomes suddenly meaningful, and these paintings become series of transformations of a conflict to its resolution. And this is what I say is another science. This is the 6-role process: stress, response, anxiety, defense, reversal, and then compromise. Now, the same kind of dialectic of emotions is presented in this other series, which is addressing the phase of his sports paintings. So he went to Mexico, where the athletes, if they lose, they have to be sacrificed. And they are sacrificed by their heart being removed and being offered to the gods up on the pyramid. This is the apple that belongs to the gods. And he comes back and he's working on the theme of the athlete, trying to be responding to being killed to try to win. And the intensity of all his athletic ones are manifest here with the wind-up. Again, the reversal of that is being into the anxiety phase, which is totally being blocked, becoming a number, a uniform, losing your face. Or winning, the defense phase, where you go through the hole. And the reversal in this case, remember the reversal is guilt there, well, it's avoiding guilt by being a football player who has a mask on the face of Sylvester Stallone, the fist fighter. And he has embraced the woman who is vulnerable and naked, Mona Lisa. For an artist, it's very important to paint Mona Lisa. And as he's creating this, the emphasis is on the fact that he's avoiding kissing the girl and getting in trouble by having this football helmet on. So he has learned from his experience, restraint of power is important. And the final kind of painting on this series is a kiss that is an illusion. And you see the frame of the painting being part of the painting. And this is a very different kind of form, a triangular spiritual kiss, rather than a kiss that is three-dimensional. And so, again, what I would like to show is that the dialectic of emotions leads to a resolution which is a spiritual statement. It's not religion here, it's spirituality. And he also does self-portraits, and this is a self-portrait of himself, painting himself as a shadow, but the light and the reality comes through this window which has kisses sketched in it. Now, what is the physical phenomenon that represents this kind of unity of action? And I have here a fisherman's chair. That's kind of an alternative pendulum. But it features this 6-role process. It features the 6 tiles together as the unity of the totality. And I like this kind of chair that pivots clockwise or counterclockwise, as saying clockwise is the evolution that's cooperative, and counterclockwise is the antagonistic. And so if you want to get into being in a kisses phase, you can go this way. And if you want to be in the crucifixion, you go that way. And you have kind of a metaphor of physics for understanding the dialectics of the mind. So what we learn from this is that the mind has 2 science phenomena. One is the scale, with the trace and balancing it formally with the opposites, the reciprocals, and the correlatives, alienation versus mutual respect. And we see how the artistic process is determining the emotional growth from conflict to resolution. And I would like to share with you the next room, which is in the middle, which is all about crucifixions, all about moral resolutions. And also to emphasize in that context that religion is a psychological phenomenon, not a metaphysical one. And what you're seeing here is the creative process implicitly encouraging morality. And that's why I call this psychology moral science, rather than calling it science of conflict resolution. Morality is a science. And this is what is, very interesting as a breakthrough in the way we understand behavior, the way we understand religion, politics. And the program that is coming out of here also introduces the two technologies. And upstairs on the one table, I have the creativity for self-discovery as murals, posters, and another section of the upstairs floor, I have the game of cards, the moral monopoly, which help to see the creativity of cultures evolving, discovering resolution, and helping to understand morality as a science, rather than as moral monopolies that control our lives.
Are people receptive to the idea, are people who are religious receptive to the idea that religion is psychology rather than metaphysics or spirituality, or is that a concept one can only see post-religion, when one has abandoned or given up or transcended religion into and found some other ethical, moral basis for their life?
Last night we had an opportunity to talk to Michael Cohen, who is a good friend. He has done the bar mitzvahs of my kids and their weddings. And he happens to be head of the conflict resolution department at Bennington College. Mm-hmm. And he is somebody who is not comfortable with bringing science into religion. So he's a person who is espousing political correctness. And he's not comfortable, but in a way, and I had nightmares about this last night. I was confronting a friend who is trying to give me a compliment by saying, no, that's not enough. So I have difficulty both with psychologists and with clergy getting across a very different perception of what is psychology and what is religion. But I dare say my Greek chutzpah helps to take that position and capitalize on it as the new selling point of what we're trying to do.
But what I'm asking is independent of what the professionals or academics think, but just what people who are immersed in religion think. Can they accept the idea that religion is a psychological solution rather than a metaphysical exercise?
This is the big challenge I have. Mm-hmm. And it's very difficult to tell Islamic fundamentalists that religion is science. But on the other side, I want to remind you what happened to the world at the end of the 20th century is that people stopped believing in the ideology of communism, which divided people in capitalists and communists, not in religious denomination, but the default paradigm was religions and nationalism. So after the Soviet collapse, suddenly we had a lot of emergence of religiosity and nationalism. And the problems of the world are because we need a new moral paradigm. And how I identify, brand myself, is the scientific moral paradigm. And I have that on the label of the sign outside of this building, where called Moral Science Project, creativity as the scientific moral paradigm. Now let's go and take a look at all these crucifixions. So what you're seeing in this room is an anchor. And the anchor for me symbolizes where the pendulum stops oscillating. And what the pendulum symbolizes, again, is the emphasis of morality. And what you see here is where the end of its period of his conflictual issues, his creativity, zeroing in to finding a way of identifying what is acceptable and moral. Here you see him crucified by the Pentagon and war. And you see his face, his hands, his toes, and all kind of the fingerprint that you had as a technique of abstraction of the face. Here you see the face as crying mechanical tears, but you see the suffering of the person in a very clear symbolic crucifixion. This is another image of a conflict resolution where he identifies with the Christian faith, with the ultimate temptation of Christ on the cross. And you see he's feeling loved by these women, lucky strikes, taking wafers, drops of his blood, and women at his feet making and taking with faces like Jackie and Elizabeth Taylor. And on the other side, you see the men as potential sacrificial heroes. And the Pleasant Hill exit is on the march to Alabama, where Martin Luther King was killed. So he's identifying with heroes, and the choices being conflict resolution and self-sacrifice, very Christian ethics. And this is his final painting, which is dramatically reconciling pleasure and pain, as the cross is made of kisses, and his own self-portrait is presented here with a crown of thorns. So you can see how he identifies again with the cross, but not his features, but the idea of a reconciliation of the opposites. Pleasure and pain are coming together, defining conflict resolution, and he's identifying with Jesus as the man with the crown of thorns. Now here you have another beautiful presentation of a crucifixion with this man during the crisis of Vietnam being carted away by policemen. And so the police force is taking this rebel with the peace symbol, with the signs of John Lennon, as being carted away and suffering another crucifixion this way. And here is a reminder of the scale again, as part of the idea of finding balance and equilibrium. So this is all I wanted to share with you as the value of this Gorski retrospective, as introducing to us the physics of the symbolic language of an artist, and how the art by itself is not only aesthetic or aesthetic value or decorative value, but it is the ultimate way of understanding our human existence, our mind, our feelings, and the relevance of that for the science is that we can use creativity and interpret our creativity as having dimensions. So I want to thank you, and if you would like, you can discuss your experience. You can sit down and talk about it.